So today I'm going to show you how to do the annotated bibliography for the literary analysis, and I wanted to show you how to make your very own template. Sometimes students struggle to take a sample of an assignment and make a template out of it, and it should be fairly easy if you just stop and think it through. So the first thing I do to make my annotated bibliography or a summary of an assignment is to really just make the works cited page. And I will count on you to look at previous works cited assignments and correctly format your works cited for each of your sources. For this assignment, you have the primary source. Here's my version of the primary source, Little Red Riding Hood. And you have 3 secondary sources. Secondary sources are writings about the primary source or something related to the primary source. Now remember to put your sources in order. Just because the primary source is primary, it doesn't mean it comes first in the order on the works cited page. It is still in alphabetical order along with the secondary sources. So once I have that done, I can go back and find my sample, and I found this sample annotated bibliography on a different topic on the internet. I just Googled sample annotated bibliography and this came up. So I'm going to show you how I'm just going to copy and paste what this person has done for their citation. Well, this is the citation, this is the annotation, annotated bibliography. And what we want to use as our sample to create a template is that annotation. So I created my annotation. I have so many samples here for you, just by pasting that first section here. And I'm going to show you that. So I pasted that here. So this annotation is about Graceland, Elvis Presley's home. It has nothing to do with our topic. So what I want to show you is how I took his basic words that introduce the content, and I used those words to guide me for what I need to include in my content. So Bain is the author of the article this other person was reviewing or annotating, and my author is Duggan or Dugan. So I would put that person's name here, keep the word describes, and use whatever words are useful to continue with that annotation, but make it specific to the source I'm using. So I have a sample of that here. So I have highlighted for you the words that I kept from that previous source and shown you how to include not just commentary on the source, but also I have asked that you include some quotations from your source. So you can see how I have done that. This is a direct quotation with the quotation marks around it. And the final is really just paraphrasing the ideas from the source. So what I have in parentheses here are the timestamps because this was a TED Talk, as you can see up here. And instead of words like the article is useful for, I wrote Dugan's talk is particularly useful for. And again, is particularly useful for is directly from that sample that I showed you. So I continued to use this sample. I used all the different types of annotations that this person used, and I am going to show you how I made that into my annotated bibliography. So if I were to go back and only include what the person in the original sample wrote and make a template out of it, this is what it would look like. Sometimes I have offered you templates. So this is how I do that. I just take what's useful in a sample and I put blanks in the spaces of what I need to add for making a successful annotation or paragraph or whatever it happens to be. Again, this is what this person wrote here for a different source about Elvis Presley. I would want to focus mine on the actual source that I am using, and this is Jenna Gardner's Little Red Riding Hood, A Critical Theory Approach, which I'm requiring you to read. So you would take author and eliminate that author's last name, and you could put either both names of the author or just last name. In academic writing, it is most common to see last name only as you are writing, so keep that in mind. A lot of students write just the first name of the author, and that is never an acceptable way to reference a source in your writing. So this writer is not a sociologist. It is someone who just posted this resource on the internet, so I downloaded it for you. I'm going to call her a scholar. I don't know where she has taught, so I will take that out. She may teach, she may not. I assume she does, but that information is not available to me. So describes is one of the most useful words that we can use when we are annotating a source. So we can say that she describes many ways to interpret a text using Little Red Riding Hood as a sample. So I won't type it all for you, but you can see how you would use the words that are already there and create a template. This is not an encyclopedia entry, but you could say this article instead. And frames could be useful. Frames, you could say the story. And then you can enter whatever it is that you want to say about how she interprets the story in many ways. And then you might want to make sure by the end of the annotation that you are focusing on what she writes that is of particular interest to you. So since I am using the word particular, you might say particularly. And then again, last name only is most common. So you could say what interpretation that is most helpful to you. So if you are doing a psychological interpretation, you might actually quote something from what her commentary is on each page or from one of the pages to help you say exactly the point that you want to make that relates to her analysis using a psychological analysis. Or if you're doing an archetypal analysis, you could use something that she has written concerning that. Then moving on to the primary source, you're going to actually use the interpretation or translation by Lucy Crane that is on that same document with Jenna Gardner's interpretations. So you could use this phrase, developed by, or instead of developed by, you might say, because this is a translation from French, translated by, and then the person who translated the text. You can, I'm a big fan of copying and paste whenever I can. You could say translated by Lucy Crane, and then we don't need to say including. And this is not a slideshow, so we would take that off. This slideshow, this story. And then you could continue on including whatever you need to include. So all of this has to do with Elvis Presley. You want to summarize the story, which is told in a form of verse. You might want to point that out. It's like a poem, so that is called verse. There are other versions that are written in prose, which is normal writing. Anything that is not in verse or poetry is considered prose. Even your writing is prose. So take out anything by Elvis Presley or about Elvis Presley, apply these samples in a way that help you create a template of your own using something that has nothing to do with what you're writing about. You're just using the structure of the annotation to accomplish your goal here. So let me know if you have questions. I'm available by text and email.